Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves. Hello and welcome to Mission Imperfect. This week's topic is one that I think many of us can relate to. Overthinking. There should be some sort of sinister drum roll or something there.
Yeah, I think we all relate to it. You're absolutely right. We even say things like "I'm an overthinker," don't we? We make it into
a label,
our
and
personal state.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the thing is, what do we actually mean by overthinking? And is it different from other thinking? So I thought, as we sometimes like to do, we like a simple definition to kick us off. And this is literally what it said. And I like this. It was thinking about something too much or for too long. And it can be more harmful than helpful. I'd like that idea of it's thinking about something for too much or for too long. But you very rightly said, Kirsty, how do we know
Yeah.
or too long?
Yeah, where that little word "too" is can be problematic, can't it? Because by whose standards?
Exactly. So I thought I'll dig into it a little bit more, see what else I can find. And it's a kind of thinking that can keep us basically a bit stuck or going around in circles. So basically sort of thinking around something, but not arriving anywhere. So it's sort of like those looping thoughts that sort of go around.
Yeah.
And then that you might sort of restart the loop rather than come out the other side. But it can be worry based thinking where we do a lot of what if. And the end result is basically a lack of action or resolution, which I think is opposed to more helpful thinking. Because obviously, as coaches, we are quite fond of thinking, but thinking in a helpful sense, which I know we don't always get to control. But let's talk a little bit what we mean about helpful thinking, where I think we sometimes refer to deep thinking. I thought maybe it's wider thinking or new thinking, where really what we're talking about is maybe expanded options or a fuller picture, but with this idea that we're going to lead somewhere with it. We're not just thinking for the sake of it, are we? We're trying to make maybe a considered decision or outcome or resolution and then taking the confident action. And that could even involve sometimes when we're overthinking, we're actually just replaying something over from the past, aren't we? It's already happened. There's nothing we can do. But the resolution we need is actually just to put it to bed or let it go or accept it, whatever it might be, rather than keep replaying it. So the action might just be to leave it alone rather than keep going round.
To tell yourself to stop, really. Yeah. That confident action is, I am not going to think about this again right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And it is hard because, our brains do like to wander off and have thoughts of their own. Usually, what's for dinner? When can I have a biscuit? That kind of thing. But we do
always
have this
is the answer to that one, by the way. Yeah.
But, have you heard of the phrase analysis paralysis?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
yeah.
yes.
It's only one I came across since starting coaching, but I think that's a phrase that a lot of overthinkers will probably also be familiar with because, the very meaning of the paralysis, it means we've stopped. We're stopped moving, we're not doing anything. We're just thinking around something.
You don't
and it's basically
conclusion.
Yeah, exactly.
The word
you end up saying
stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, you end up saying things like, I'm doing my own head in. I say that sometimes.
Very often, yes. So how do we identify this overthinking then? How do we know when we've crossed that line from just having a good think, which I think is a lovely thing to do. I like a good think.
Yeah, me too.
However, when are we crossing that line? When does it become overthinking, do you think? Or am I overthinking it?
Oh, now this is where it gets interesting because, like, as with most things, there isn't this lovely visible line that we can see and know not to cross it, just like, our own personal boundaries. All of these things, they're our own, aren't they, I suppose. But I think what you might recognize are some of these things. You might be someone who does a lot of what if. We even did a
Right.
whole episode, didn't we, about what if? And it's probably going to be of a negative skew. So you're
Mhm.
playing over worst case scenarios. This is overthinking perhaps future decisions. But we can also do overthinking in the past, the rumination side we just mentioned, where we're dwelling in the past when it's
Yeah.
actually all happened. There's nothing we can do about it. We kind of say, oh, I wish I did this. And if only I'd said that, and this outcome would be different. And
Yeah.
you can see immediately with that one how that can be unhelpful because you can't actually change it. You might be able to do something as a result of it, but you can't actually change what's actually
Yeah.
happened.
You can learn from it, but it's when you
Yeah.
look at it that, it's crazy, isn't it? How much time we spend going over, thinking about overthinking about what's happened in the past that we didn't like, even though we can't change it.
Yeah. And we've spoken a bit about this in our presence
Yeah.
episode. Like we've done with many things, they kind of overlap. So we might do a lot of what ifing for the future. We might
Mhm.
ruminate in the past and wish we'd done things differently. It could be that we make more fear-based decisions rather than perhaps things that we truly want. We think, I'll do the thing that perhaps keeps me safe or that we think will. And I always say a fear-based decision is not really the true decision because something else is running the show, something else is making the decision for you.
It's about
It
what you
could
don't
be,
want rather than what you want, isn't
yeah,
it? Make that fear-based decision. And sometimes
yeah,
that's valid, but not necessarily. Yeah, it seems to me there's very much a link between that what ifing and the fear-based decision because, like you said, the what ifing is usually
yeah,
negative, isn't it? We tend to catastrophize with our what ifs, and that leads so obviously to making a decision around avoiding those nasty what ifs
yeah,
as opposed to going for something positive that we want.
yeah. And it could be procrastination that's masked as I'm
Mm.
still thinking about it because actually we know there's something else behind that procrastination. I think we've all been there.
Oh
And
yes.
yeah, perhaps a little bit of perfectionism as well, which I think was that our very first episode? Well, yeah, because Mission Imperfect, I think we spoke about perfectionism right at the very
Yeah.
start.
Yes. Yeah, and you know, that refusal to commit to doing something or to putting something out there until you think it's perfect, but then is it perfect is where the overthinking kicks in, isn't it? How can I make it better? What do I need to do? And you end up not doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so sadly, no sort of big red flashing light and sirens going off when we cross that line. We have to find it for ourselves from
We do.
a good
But
thing to an
but
overthink.
there are tail signs, and I think the point is it's very normal. So don't beat yourself up over some
Oh yeah.
overthinking, but it's probably something we don't want to always get caught up in because let's be honest, it's quite mentally exhausting, isn't it? We make so many
Mhm.
decisions in a day. Some of them are very, very fleeting and the insignificant ones, and it's just perhaps a simple yes or no. But what we
Biscuit.
don't want
Yeah.
is the important ones to always get caught up in this level of detailed, time consuming analysis and possible sabotage.
Mhm.
It's going to be tiring for us to
Yeah.
manage that in a day. And of course, indecision, because that's what effectively we're doing, we're thinking around something so much and not deciding, results in inaction or not leaving
Yeah.
something alone, which can lead to anxiety because we've left
Mm.
something unresolved, we haven't made a decision, haven't chosen to leave something alone. And we also might miss opportunities. I think,
Definitely.
at its heart, overthinking is possibly a classic case of time being wasted to a degree. It's not to say we do need to think about things, but not perhaps always to the degree that we might do.
Very true. And I mean, this kind of rather begs the question, doesn't it? It's not fun. That little
Mm.
list there, that is not an enjoyable place to be, is it? Being exhausted and indecisive and increasingly anxious because you get that vicious circle of anxiety. Once you start feeling anxious, you beat yourself up for feeling anxious or for not taking action, etc. And that sense of missed opportunities. it's not a good place to be, and yet we keep on doing it. And why is it so hard to stop? As you say, it's very normal. So that this isn't meant as a judgment or criticism in any way, but it is really hard to avoid it, isn't it? And I read somewhere that overthinking is often an attempt to avoid discomfort because it's usually around some kind of decision or about something in the past that we don't feel good about,
Mm.
and it makes us uncomfortable. So if you very often when we overthink, you do actually know what you want to do, but you also know there's going to be some discomfort involved in doing it. And you keep coming back to it to try and change that or see a way around it, or even to try and convince yourself to make a different decision that maybe doesn't feel as good to you, but avoids discomfort.
Yeah.
When you're going over and over it in the past, it might seem that you are actively engaging with the discomfort of the past. But at the same time, you were often in those situations trying to justify our own actions, aren't we? Our own behavior. You're trying to change, think about the things we could have said or done that we didn't. Often maybe trying to shift blame. Um, or otherwise, we are trying to create defenses against being in that situation again, avoiding the discomfort. So it does have, a purpose, as long as you don't let it go too far.
Yeah. 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 And obviously it is hard, but as with all things we talk about, it just starts by tuning in to what's going
Yes.
on in the first place. But let's talk a little bit about what we would perhaps call a better kind of thinking than
Mhm.
overthinking. So whether it's deeper or wider or new thinking, how is that
Newthinking.
different? Let's just talk a bit about that
Yeah.
because some of these might start to also feel familiar, and you'll perhaps notice the difference of when you're in a state where you're perhaps thinking yourself around in
Mm.
circles, the overthinking, as opposed to accessing new thinking and I or deeper thinking. And I think that's where you're able to access a state where it's you're more thoughtfully kind of
Mm.
reflecting. It's a bit perhaps with curiosity rather than with a bit of finger pointing and blame and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
You're able to perhaps be a bit more creative, and there might even be an intention to that thinking about this is the decision I want to make. I think it probably feels more grounded, probably a bit less emotive, personal, even subjective. I mean, our
Definitely.
thinking's always going to be subjective. We can only ever think from our own perspective, but you might just notice that you're feeling a bit less emotional and sort of skewed in your thinking. I think we can recognize sometimes when we're being a bit emotional in our thinking.
Definitely, yeah.
Hopefully, it's going to lead to some kind of clarity or action. So things that might show that you're accessing sort of deeper thinking, you might be journaling, for example, because
Mm.
things pop up often when you're writing things down, more so than just things swirling around in your head. So
It's good.
like I
It's a
said,
good channel into the subconscious, isn't it? When you
yeah, yeah. And like I
hold
said, it's got perhaps
information.
more of a curious edge to it rather than critical. Instead of that feeling like there's pressure, it might feel like it's a bit more spacious.
Oh, I like
And
that.
you're allowing yourself to accept, because you mentioned this discomfort, Kirsty. I think you're absolutely right. But maybe you're able to accept some of that discomfort that
Mm.
arise rather than just trying to sort of squash them. And you just kind of feel like you're a little bit more in control rather than subject to all those thoughts that are happening.
You are doing the thinking rather than having it happen to you.
Yes. Yeah, I think so. So I'm hoping that might
Yeah.
feel familiar to people. I think I can recognize when I'm in a more sort of grounded state for thinking. And it's more productive, I think, than the kind of thinking where I know I'm just going to go around in a complete circle and make no progress whatsoever.
Yes. Yeah. So trying to avoid some kind of uncomfortable outcome somewhere along the line when life has always got some element of discomfort, isn't it? So how do we I mean, we've just talked about the signs that we might be overthinking, but what kind of clues are there that can bring our awareness to this? Because sometimes that sense of conscious awareness can be a little elusive to trigger, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. Because we've just spoken about what the actual thinking might be like.
Yeah,
Sometimes that's hard to perhaps step into and recognize. So there might be some other clues. We've mentioned one of our favorites before, the old body barometer. That
gotta
might
love
give
the
us a
body
few clues.
barometer.
We might have, for example, there might be a sense of tension in our
Mm,
body as opposed to maybe a sense of sort of calm or ease. There might be a sense of sort of urgency rather than presence. But it's not to say that some deeper thinking may not also be uncomfortable. We can't always avoid discomfort, but I think this may be a way of being able to deal with it and respond to it and sort of move past it a bit more
mm,
smoothly, a bit more quickly, and without that kind of blame and accusation, just acceptance, I think, of,
mm.
okay, perhaps this happened, it wasn't ideal, perhaps this may happen and it won't be ideal. This is what I plan to do,
Yeah, and I
rather than
trust.
staying in the what if panic,
Mm.
not going to decide anything.
So, something we've talked about before, that idea of being able to trust yourself to cope with it, just as
Yeah,
you've somehow
yeah,
managed to deal with all previous discomfort you've encountered.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I mean, you've mentioned the body barometer, and something we haven't really referenced, the emotional barometer as well. When you recognize that emotional state, because speaking personally, that kind of overthinking loop leaves me feeling very often frustrated. Well, any one of these things, or all of them,
Yes.
frustrated, annoyed, upset, self-critical, judgmental of others, um, and maybe very using the word emotional when I'm talking about the emotional barometer doesn't seem quite right, but just emotional, likely to, wanting to cry and
Mm,
rage or whatever. I think that happens quite a lot for me when the overthinking is really getting to me. And we might not always want to admit when we're in that state. And we like to think we're always being perfectly reasonable, but we do know it when we get there, don't we?
yeah, definitely. And then hopefully the most obvious of all, but I appreciate this might be on the other side of the thinking, is the thinking outcome. So as you said, Kirsty, the brain barometer, are you moving forward, sideways, or whatever it might be, somehow, rather than staying stuck or in a loop? I
Yeah,
think those are the two clear signs of overthinking, when there's just no progress. You're no further forward. You've thought all around all sorts of permutations and possibilities and annoyance, and probably the emotions have come in, body barometers come in, but there's no real sense of I'm any further forward than I was before.
yeah. So basically, what are your body, your emotions, and your brain telling you about what your mind's up to at the moment?
Yeah,
Does it feel
exactly.
good?
And we've got a couple of questions just as ideas to encourage this deeper thinking rather than the
Mm.
overthinking. Just a couple of suggestions that people might want to try, and they could be as simple as asking yourself, what am I actually afraid of here? I know that's a big juicy question, isn't it? But
Mm,
that's the idea of confronting that discomfort head on. Because I don't know about you, Kirsty, I'd much rather things were in the light and I can have a look at them and see them rather than they be lurking, because they're still going to be problematic when they're lurking, aren't they?
yes.
Rather than
Yes,
us having a
you
look at
might as
them.
well know what you're facing. It helps.
Exactly. Exactly. Because then you can make the informed decision of, okay, does it feel too big a risk, too big a stretch?
Mm.
Or actually, can I take a step nearer? There are different ways of looking at it rather than it having to be in one big swoop, like you have to
Mm.
get it in one go, for example.
And actually
Um,
saying it is too much
mm,
is is an acceptable decision.
yeah,
You don't have to force yourself into doing something that doesn't feel right.
exactly. It could be, you could also ask, what decision, if any, or discomfort am I avoiding?
Hmm.
And perhaps, what do I know deep down already? And you might be avoiding it or discounting it, but there might be something there that's also a clue as to why you keep thinking around it. It's almost like, you don't want to look directly at something, so you just think, I'll go around, I'll go around the edges
Well,
and
pretend it's
avoid
not
it.
there, it's not there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And
Um,
that comes back again to what I was saying just now, that the one thing that we can always know deep down is that we've got this 100% track record of surviving all the discomfort we've experienced so far.
yeah, I think, allow yourself to recognize and acknowledge if you notice that the overthinking tendency has popped up, because it will. we
Oh, yes.
I think we even had a conversation last week, Kirsty, about something that I was overthinking, and I even said, I called it out as I was overthinking it, and I think you said, yes, I think you quite possibly are. But you could do some other things. You could give yourself even a bit of a limit of thinking time on something, and yes, that might take a bit of playing with to get used to, but it could be that even if you have to park it and you haven't resolved it, but you won't just stay sitting in it indefinitely. You'll perhaps move on, do something else, come back to it later.
Yeah. I know somebody who actually sets themselves a worry time, sort of half an hour a day when, so if they catch themselves once and say, no, no, that I'm going to do that at 4 o'clock. Right now, I'm moving on from it.
Yeah. And I think, as I said before, embrace those smaller, messier steps than one
Mm.
perfect leap. You'll always be getting closer, even if it's not quite in the direction that you necessarily first thought. Then, but trying to do one perfect leap is always going to feel more daunting, and we'll find many reasons to put it off or go around the subject.
Yeah.
Um, say it aloud. That's another way to help you stop overthinking something. You've got something out in the open, so you could do just to yourself or someone trusted, like a coach. You can actually look at it in a bit more, helpful detail. What's actually really going on here,
Yeah.
and you'll just
Just,
see it from
just,
a different light.
exactly. It's just once it's out of your head, you can see it from that different angle. It's such a simple thing to do. It's so powerful, but so often when you're overthinking, the idea of actually saying all that out loud makes you feel a bit ridiculous, which is an excellent clue that you're
Yes,
overthinking.
yeah. I've literally had someone say that in a session, saying, "Oh God, now I've said it out loud. It feels really silly." But we
Yeah.
were able to actually pinpoint, well, why is that? What can we do about it? And it just made it a whole thing lighter, actually, which
Yes.
I don't think either of us were necessarily expecting, but that was the outcome.
Mm,
But most of all, please don't beat yourself up for
mm.
overthinking. Like I said, it's very human. We're all going to do it, and the fact that you've noticed that's what you're doing, I think, will actually help in itself. It's like when you call something out, you're like, okay, here it is again, and you can either choose a different approach or perhaps know that maybe now is not the right time to
Mhm.
look at it and think about it. And it just sort of gives you that chance to create that bit of distance, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean that's saying to yourself, "Oh, look, I'm overthinking again." It just creates that little bit of separation because suddenly the thinking is something that you are observing, not that you are doing. And it stops you getting so swept up in it. That I think that's when we're overthinking, we are completely swept up in the thoughts that we're having, as opposed to taking control of our own minds and focusing. And that's not always, well, it's often not an easy thing to do, to take that control, to have that focus. But you can practice it and work on it. And
Mm.
little things like that, just recognizing what's going on, immediately creates that little bit of separation, a little bit more sort of sense of you having the control and not having to be part of it if you don't want to.
Yeah.
Because it isn't about not thinking, is it? I mean, we don't hear the phrase underthinking very much, and maybe we should, because there are definitely some very serious underthinkers out there who need attention drawing to that problem.
Yes. Just
But
plow straight in, no thinking whatsoever.
um, so we can both acknowledge overthinking and celebrate the incredible gift of being able to think. I
Mm.
guess it's like Goldilocks thinking, isn't it? You don't want to be doing it too much. You don't want to be doing it too little. You want to get it just right. And just right for you, because everyone's going to find a different level and a different way of thinking that works the best for them.
Yes, definitely. No, I totally agree with that. As with most things we talk about, it is about it feeling comfortable for you. But I think we can all acknowledge we've probably all felt some discomfort around overthinking, driving
Mm,
ourselves mad. Might have said
yes.
that phrase that I do. I'm doing my own head in. It's one that I say. It's like because I can't think my way out of it productively. So I know there's other stuff going on there, but I'm going round in a spiral rather than finding my way out. And sometimes we need a bit of help to do that.
Definitely. And just being able to talk it through can be a surprising help. It really can.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's share a few quotes about overthinking. And I found one which I absolutely love. It's actually quite a long one, but I just thought it was brilliant. And I think you'll like this one, Kirsty. It says, "They say look before you leap. So look, but do not look for too long. Do not look into the void of uncertainty, trying to predict each and every possible outcome, to evaluate every possible mistake, to prevent each possible failure. Look for the opportunity to leap and leap faster than your fear can grab you. Leap before you talk yourself out of it, before you convince yourself to set up a temporary camp that turns into a permanent delay on your journey into your own heart." And that's by somebody called Veronica Tugaleva, I think is the name. I just thought
Wow.
that was so brilliant. And there's so many little things that we've touched on probably in other episodes. There are things around fear, talking ourselves out of things as much as we might talk ourselves into them. But the thing that came up for me there was it's about sort of considering, wasn't it? She said, do look, but maybe
Mm,
don't look forever to the extent that you set up this, I love this temporary camp that turns into permanent delay.
yeah. I mean that's powerful. I mean, I think what stood out for me was do not look into the void of uncertainty trying to predict each and every possible outcome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good what
That's,
ifery, isn't it?
yeah, that really sums up my overthinking. Uh, I mean, I you went for a long and beautifully worded one, and I'm going for a very short and to the point one. If you spend too much time thinking about a thing, you'll never get it done. And that's Bruce Lee.
Well, yeah, this is also true. If we spend all our time thinking and not doing, not a lot is actually going to happen, is it? And
We
not
stay
totally
stuck.
unrelated, this one by Alan Watts is the person who thinks all the time has nothing to think about except thoughts, and so he loses touch with reality. So I
Oh,
thought was rather interesting. It's
oh, I
perhaps
could
created their
overthink.
own world of issues, perhaps ones that
Yeah.
aren't even there.
Gosh, I think I could overthink that quote.
Connected you. Yes. I just made your brain ache a bit there, Kirsty.
Yeah. Oh, my brain has gone off trying to work that one out a bit. All right, focus. And a final one that I liked was so often people confuse overthinking with problem solving. And
Mm.
that was from Dinsa Sakan. Oh, my pronunciation is probably dreadful. I apologize. But yeah, I, we, I will often try to convince myself that I am doing useful problem solving work when I'm just going round and round in circles.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the time to notice it and perhaps park it for a moment. So, question for everybody. Have you been overthinking about something recently? No judgment here, because we both could readily put our hands up and say yes. But then how did you actually move past it? And
Good question.
I I'm really trying consciously to spend less time thinking and a little bit more time doing. I want it to be considered action, but I don't want it to be inaction
Mm.
because I don't want to waste the time that I have. So I was thinking about this, and I think one of the things I spent a lot of time probably overthinking was debating my coaching niche.
Oh,
So we are all encouraged to have one. So basically, that means be specific about who you are talking to, who it is you want to work with, who you want to help. Because if you try to talk to everyone, you talk to no one. And I totally understand this concept of trying to
mm,
talk to everyone is probably too loose. People are going to think, well, why me? But I was torn between that and the fact that for me, coaching is so universally beneficial
yeah.
and it is consistent. Coaching remains the same regardless of who comes. They will come with their own sort of issues and topics. We'll probably see some similarities, but it'll be this beautiful space with the coaching being consistent and the person bringing whatever they need on the other side.
Mm.
So it took me a long time, but I've landed somewhere which I'm happy with for now. We'll see where it leads me. I basically have
Yeah.
three strands to my business as a life coach, and I'm just working my way imperfectly through that with some messy action because I know that that is better than no action and just overthinking it. I'm not saying I'm nailing it, I'm not saying it's all going swimmingly, but I'm comfortable enough, I'll put the enough caveat in there, that I'm just doing something that I think it feels okay. And I also, as I've always said from the very beginning, I can choose again. And
Absolutely.
it takes an element of I think courage to just say, if it doesn't work, I will choose something else again, rather than putting yourself under that pressure of I must get it perfect from the off.
Oh,
And I
that's
think we've
very,
all been there where we feel like this, we have to get it everything right from the get-go.
first
But life
time.
just isn't like that. So as
No,
we know.
it's what with hindsight we can recognize as mistakes, what we might classify as failures that actually allow us to build success, isn't it? And you said it may
Yeah.
not be going perfectly, yeah, but it is going. It's
It is going. It is
better to
going
be
somewhere.
going imperfectly than not going anywhere.
Exactly. Exactly. It might be going sideways, but at least it's going somewhere. What about you, Kirsty? What do you overthink about?
Everything. Um, well, you come up with quite a sort of a deep example there, and I've gone really shallow. I have, I think the biggest overthinking issue for me is that I do it to a lot of little things all the time. I mean, just silly things like, what to wear. Am I going to be too hot, too cold? Will I need more layers? Will I have the right colours? Will it go under the coat? I've got. I wouldn't even say I spend a lot of time on my appearance, but I can spend an incredible amount of time deciding which particular jumper I'm going to put with a pair of jeans. Ridiculous. You know, how many biscuits to have? That's a good one. That agonizing over, do you go past the two or not?
Oh, as
Seriously,
you said, the
I will
answer is
spend
lots, surely.
I will spend quite some time on the whole debate about whether I can have another biscuit, whether I should have another biscuit, with the pros and cons. What time to set my alarm for crying out? When you said how ridiculous it sounds when you say it out loud. I've got this weird thing where I don't like to set my alarm for a time that ends in a zero or a five. And then, because everyone's doing that, so it might get overused and not go off. Yes, I know. Um, but, and exactly how many snoozes am I going to want? What's the latest point I can possibly get up without missing endless. Um, and buying things. Oh dear God. Especially online when I can sit there on the laptop for hours and hours comparing different products and different sites and wondering about, cost versus use or value and the right size, the right color, is it eco-friendly? Is there a better? And if you're spending a lot of money on something, that's obviously pretty valid, but I'll do it for loads of cheap shit as well. It's crazy. Um, but the way I'm starting to be able to break myself out of it is a lot of what we've talked about. But I would sum it up as recognizing it, bringing that conscious awareness to it. When I recognize that I'm looping, when I can sense the frustration
Yeah.
and the emotions that are happening, and it's, if I ask and then asking myself questions around it, what, I mean, going back to the buying something overthinking, the simple question, what if I don't buy this, will often tune me into the body barometer. If there or the emotional barometer more accurately, if there's that sinking feeling when I go, I'm not going to buy it, then obviously I do want to buy it. So let's cut the crap and just buy the damn thing.
Yeah.
If there's a sense of relief, then obviously I don't want it. So walk away. So
I like
sometimes it
that.
can be surprisingly simple.
We just need to find you an extra one to add to the question on the biscuits and the alarm clock, and see what question we can come up to help you with that. But no, I really like that example. What if I don't buy this? And seeing
Yeah.
how you respond to that, and then you can make the decision, I would hope, quite a lot more quickly, and it feel like it was the right one, rather than having to keep thinking around all those other things that you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of decisions, just asking yourself, what if I don't? It
Yeah.
can trigger a sense of what you really want
Yeah.
outside of all the overthinking.
Excellent. Well, I hope you've all found that helpful to consider some of the differences between overthinking and perhaps some slightly more useful thinking, whether it's deeper, wider, new, just something to help you make a decision and make some kind of movement or progress or leave something alone, as it might be if we're going over past stuff. I think that's it for this week, and we shall see you all soon for another episode. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.